We'll there's our recording. Welcome everybody to our August Market Manager Forum. Our topic for the month is vendor recruitment. And I'm glad you could all join us today. And why don't we quickly go around and introduce ourselves, say what market we're from. My name is Andrea Warner, and I'm the Market Manager Liaison for the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association. And I will call on my colleague, Scott.
Hey again, everybody. I think we're all pretty well acquainted with one another. This feels like the core group, but I'm joining you from Clovis, as always. And I am NMFMA's Marketing and Technology Specialist. I see Victoria moving around, so I'll tag her next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria Martinez, and I'm the Farmers Market Manager here for Carlsbad, New Mexico. So I don't know, I can't see anybody else who I could tag. Let me see. But something super interesting we have going on today is we have a market night today, but we're also having a pep rally for Carlsbad High School. And so we're super excited. We're super pumped. Looks like we're going to have a great community turnout today.
Go Cavemen.
Yay, yes.
What a great way to bring the community out who might not be coming out to market. That's a wonderful customer and vendor recruitment idea that I didn't even get into our slideshow today. Thanks, Victoria, for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Community outreach is great. Well, I'll help. I see Allison next to you. So Allison, why don't you go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Allison, and I am reporting from Las Cruces. I am the Communications Administrator for the NMFMA. I'm also having my lunch, so I'm going to be having my camera off, but I will say I have local tomatoes. I have beautiful, like, yellow watermelon, and also, like, chilazo. It's like a local tajin, so that's my lunch today. And I will tag you, Lindsay. Or Tiffany. Sorry, I read your last name. I know who you are.
You know who I am. Hi, I'm Tiffany. I am the manager of the Silver City Farmers Market.
I think Virginia, you're our last here. You want to unmute and
she might be out of pocket. She says she's in the middle of a construction project today, but listen.
Yes, she was listening.
Thank you. I don't have that chat up, so I appreciate the chat readers. Okay, well, let's jump right into.
Did we get Mr. Ron?
Oh, sorry, Ron. Right, well, you shared, but you didn't share with the group. So thanks, Scott.
That's okay. I was just hiding. No, I'm a manager of the Black Mesa Winery Farmers Market and a participant for the VVAC Winery market. So both of my markets have beverages.
Let's get started. I'll share my screen here and we'll get our slideshow up. Can everybody see the slideshow on the screen?
Yes.
So our the presentation today, I'm doing a very short, very basic presentation on vendor recruitment, and I was hoping that at the end of our presentation today, we might have some of you all share some of your experiences, some wins or some losses or some challenges on vendor recruitment, and we can get a little deeper into your needs as after the presentation. So things to consider. Oops, sorry. There's a little preview of what's to come. Things to consider for vendor recruitment. You're always going to want to be thinking about meeting the needs of the community and offering a variety of products. Thinking about who your customers are, checking in with your vendors about what they're buying. And something I saw as I was doing a little research into vendor recruitment was this wording, culturally relevant foods in your community. And I think that there's a couple different ways we can think of culturally relevant. One is would be just the culture of your community. In New Mexico, there's so much diversity among the food in the communities and what grows in the area. And I'll share a little story from the Silver City Farmers Market. A few years ago, one of our vendors started selling jujubes, which is an Asian fruit that's found its way to New Mexico, and where that first year at market, nobody had heard of it. Now we get people asking at that seasonal point, when are the jujubes coming in? When are we going to get jujubes? So it actually, the market changed the culture of food in our community, where this little known fruit has now become a favorite. And I've actually seen other vendors selling it as well. So that's one way to think of culturally relevant foods. What do people eat in your area? And it might be different all throughout New Mexico. Another story I can share about culturally relevant foods is we had a vendor in Silver City selling a plant called espazote, which is a Mexican plant. It's an herb that's used a lot in Mexican cooking, and we did actually have some folks reaching out asking if they could find espazote at our market. And so that vendor carrying that food from culturally relevant, not from the cooking in our area per se, it did bring in another population specifically to market because they couldn't find that food anywhere else, or that plant anywhere else in our community. And I know in some of our more urban communities, there's immigrant populations that come in, and they're always looking for plants and foods that they might have had in their country and not necessarily able to find here. And so when you're thinking of vendor recruitment, that might be one aspect to think about, is foods from other parts of the world that people are looking at in your community and finding someone who can offer those. Another idea, another thing to consider for vendor recruitment is that not a lot of vendors growers don't have experience at farmers markets, or they might only have a food that grows seasonally, like Ron was sharing about his peaches and nectarines. If some markets offer a community table that will, and there's two ways I've heard of having a community table. One is actually offering a spot for small growers or local or folks who have extra food from their garden, or a fruit tree that's become ripe and they've got way too much before it gets too ripe and goes bad, and just creating a space where a vendor can come in and have a small amount and sell at a table that you've provided, a tent you've provided, and then they can come for the day. Or if it's a new vendor who's not quite sure if they have enough to sell at market, or if they're going to be able to or what they're selling is going to be of interest at market, that community table, making it a lot available to them for, let's say, 2 markets, they can get an idea of if their product is going to work at your market, and then after that, they have some time to be able to get their own market vendor setup together. The other community table setup I've heard about is actually having a volunteer who wants to run the community table, and then people can come in with their extra produce and leave it there, and it can be sold by one person, and they name their price, and then they can come back at the end of market and pick up the portion of their sales. That takes a little more coordinating and someone who actually wants to run the table. But I thought that was an interesting way to run a community table, so that the vendor doesn't even, or the grower doesn't even have to necessarily be at market. And I'm just going to stop there, and before I move forward and see if anybody had any comments or questions, or if I can dig deeper into some of these topics before we move on. Yep, go ahead, Ron. I see your finger.
We have set up a community table. Nobody's taken us up on that at the VBAC winery. But I like the idea that you had there with, because I have a spare tent. Maybe I set up a tent at the Black Mesa and put a table out there, and then have people and say, just ask me about this table. You can put stuff on this table and just, talk to the people that come through, and then maybe they'll know somebody or spread the word.
Yep, that's a great way to build the community table, is to put up a sign that announces what it is and what people can use it for, and then they'll know it's there and available at market. And maybe Tiffany can talk about this a little more, because she's been running the community table lately. We in Silver City, we actually only charge $5 to set up at the community table for your first 2 times there, and so that also doesn't put the pressure of the full fee on the table, and it gives those new vendors a little more incentive to come, but then it also gives them a little bit of savings, so as they set up their community, or as they set up their full vendors booth, they had a little break for the first couple times they came out to market, because it is an investment to buy the tent and to buy the table. So you want to know that whatever you're bringing out to market is gonna sell. Speaking of that, something else that's nice to remind new vendors is that people who come to market, a lot of them are a creature of habit, and they have their favorite vendors that they shop with. And it's really common, even if you have like a great table full of beautiful produce or something, highly coveted at market, to not see as much, to not get as many customers your first couple times at market. And it is a long game building those customer relationships. And so just if people are feeling frustrated after their first market, new vendors, if they're feeling frustrated after their first market, just to remind them to stick with it, and that it's over time that those relationships will grow. Yeah, go ahead, Tiffany. I see your hand.
One of the ways that new vendors, like, you can encourage your new vendors to be that popular spot at market if they have a lot of nice things and people are passing them by because they quote unquote don't know them, or they're timid to try a new vendor, is to have a really nice display, good tablecloths, clean, fine, lines or baskets, or something that attracts the eye and says, I take pride in what I'm displaying, works a lot better for a new vendor than just a bare table with a pile of stuff on it. So helping your new vendors learn how to set up or how to create that showcase environment is important.
That's an excellent point. Yes, excellent point. And just another last piece to consider if you have if you're starting a new market or you have a small market, is to add crafts to your market. And I'm just going to say that with a caveat, because we've seen farmers markets start up be short on produce or agricultural vendors early in the season and add crafters, and then they get a slew of crafters. And then all of a sudden your farmer's market becomes a craft market. And so really curating those crafts can help you to make sure to help give some guidelines, so you're not just sending people away or accepting anybody who comes in. I was going to share our guidelines for the Silver City Farmers Markets vendor craft market, and it was really this number 5 that I wanted to share of the guidelines. Well, number 4, work must be original, no kits. It stays within that locally grown and grow it yourself idea. Make it yourself. Don't buy it online and just assemble it and bring it. But I really like this guideline here. All work must have historic significance to farmers market, such as hand spun, yarn, pottery, woodwork, or have subject matter of market scenes, fruits, vegetables, flowers. And so that way you have something in place to be able to tell a vendor who's selling something that just may not fit within the market that you have these guidelines in place, and that's why their product is not able to be sold at your market. Tiffany, you have your hand up again. Go ahead.
No, you covered it. I was just going to say cultural relevancy or relevant to agriculture, like people building bamboo tomato cages or raised beds, or, you know, something like that, that they want to sell at market is better than somebody is selling clocks.
Right. And right now in Silver City, there's a person I love this vendor that's been there with the bags, that they're making upcycled market bags. And so where upcycling might not be something that we see at market, the fact that it's a bag that you can buy to put your produce in fits within these guidelines. And so it just also gives, anytime you're creating guidelines, really making sure your guidelines say, like this number 1 guideline here that says chosen by management. Just make sure that you're writing it into your guidelines, that it says that you are making the final decision. My other favorite guideline for in the Silver City Farmers Market guidelines says that it's up to the manager's discretion to I'm losing the word here, sorry, I'm going off the cuff, to enforce the guidelines. And so just giving yourself that ability to say, this is the guideline, and today I need to make an exception, and that is written in that I can, so that you have manager. It's just, like I said, give yourself the last word in all of these decisions. Okay. Another something to consider is reaching out to local businesses and organizations. I've added here the email address for a map of all the local extension offices in the state, and FFH, the Future Farmers of America, 4-H, and the Master Gardeners Program, which are all agricultural programs, are all run through the extension office. So by reaching out to your local extension officer, you might be able to get in contact with these groups or local growers in the area. It's even just good to remind your extension officer that there's a farmer's market, because sometimes folks reach out to them looking to open up more markets. That's a good first step to reach out to in your local community to find vendors. Another vendor recruitment possibility is any farming groups you have in your area. We have a permaculture group, a sustainability group, and a beekeeper group in our county here, as well as multiple gardening classes happening. So as those folks are going to gardening classes to learn how to garden, it's also, you might be able to get a little plug in through the teachers that if they might think about becoming vendors at the farmers market as they learn to grow their garden. It's a great fundraiser for school gardens to come in and make sales. I was actually in Santa Fe Farmers Market 2 weeks ago, and I bought some goat cheese, some cow green cheese, and some bagels that are all made by the local Montessori school there as a fundraiser for their school. A lot of schools have school gardens now, and so encouraging the school to come out and sell some of that as a fundraiser, some of what they're growing, if the kids aren't eating it all, is another great way to find and recruit new vendors. And lastly, food businesses, especially ones that have commercial kitchens. That's another nice vendor recruitment possibility. Bakeries, of course. We had a juice shop come in and they pre-made juice with lids for a while and sold it at market when they were brand new, and that was a great way to let the community know they were there, and it was a great offering at market. Local restaurants or a local tortilla or tamale vendor, they might like to come out on a Saturday and vend. Now with that commercial kitchen, a food business that already has a commercial kitchen, you're not bumping into those regulations in the same way as a home. Someone who's making breakfast burritos at home might have a little more struggle with permitting to be able to come in and sell at market. So finding already established businesses is a nice way to find vendors. And Tiffany, you've got your hand up. Are you
No.
from before? I just want to make sure I'm not. I thought it might be up from before, but if you have anything to add.
It was an old hand up.
And before we move on, oh, I skipped a page is what happened. I didn't. Okay.
Nope.
Something else to think about when you're thinking about vendor recruitment is to advertise. And I'm sharing this advertisement from that we just recently put out in Silver City for a move that the market had. Because if you see this red circle at the bottom, this goes on all of our flyers. This was a newspaper ad as well. It says for vendor inquiries, and it gives the email contact of where your vendors can reach out. So this is also kind of that subliminal message. Someone might not even be thinking about being a vendor at farmers market, and they see your ad and they think, oh, there is, I'm going to reach out and find out what it takes to be a vendor at farmers market. You can also put all the information on your website, a whole vendor page on your website. I've seen a lot of farmers market websites who actually have their applications right there. You can fill them out online. And any other outreach material you have, you can add that little hint. Early in the season, you might want to think about putting an ad, Facebook, newspaper, anywhere else you're advertising the market that you're looking for vendors. That's another good way to recruit vendors. And I just wanted to do one other separate plug here as we're looking at this flyer. And I've put a link down here for our market funding page. This flyer and newspaper ad was paid for by the promotional funds that the New Mexico Farmers Marketing makes available to your market as a member. And I just want to remind you, because we're getting close to November when the deadline is to put in to turn in your invoices and proofs of payment to get refunded for your promotional funds when you advertise. And that link there, which I'm hoping Allison will share with us and will make available after, will take you to the explanation of what it takes to what you need for promotional funding. And so this flyer that we're looking at here, because we've added in our Fresh New Mexico local logos and our Double Up Food Bucks logo there, this flyer and newspaper ad fits within the guidelines to be paid for by those promotional funds. And so that was really helpful to be able to have those funds available. And again, it's $300 that your market receives every year, plus $5 extra for every agricultural vendor you have. So depending on how big your market is, you may have more than $300 available. Okay, is that your hand up again, Tiffany?
That's a new hand up.
Okay.
I didn't know you could lower it. Sorry, guys. The training on here that you said pre-season meeting where new growers or vendors can get trained. I just wanted to add, I mean, that's excellent. Something I hadn't thought of doing, but sounds like a great idea. Especially if you have producers that are canning vegetables or bread makers or something like that, where you need to encourage them to obtain their food handlers certificate, or talk to them about where they're creating their items. If they need a commercial kitchen, that would be a great time to do that rather than once they start selling at market.
Yep, no, that's exactly why I put that here. Not only can you train, you can talk about, you have that opportunity pre-season to be able to talk to new agricultural vendors. You could even talk about what's popular at market and what maybe they should be planting early season, because that they might not have thought of. It's an opportunity to talk about Double Up Food Bucks and EBT and other programs at market. It's an opportunity for seasoned vendors to maybe share some of their insights with new vendors, right? It's an opportunity to talk about permitting, and it's just a great way to also just onboard those new vendors at market. Another pre-season idea is to go to other events that are happening during the winter and do your vendor recruitment, get it in their head that farmers market is going to be happening in the spring, and you're hoping that they can start planting to get to market. And I just lastly wanted to talk a little about vendor retention, because we can recruit as many vendors as we like, but it's keeping those vendors sometimes too can be hard at market. So just like in that pre-season meeting that we were talking about, remembering to include your vendors in decision making. And so that pre-season meeting is also a time that you can review guidelines with the vendors and see if they have any ideas or anything that didn't work for them the year before, so that you can start the season with maybe some fresh guidelines. And just having clear guidelines and clear expectations for vendors helps to retain them, because they know what to expect, and they understand that the rules are for everyone, and that there's not vendors getting special treatment, or they're not getting punished for something that isn't being asked of everyone else. And that application at the beginning for vendors, it should have clear market rules. The permitting information that you were talking about, Tiffany, having that there to help them so that they can go and find those, make sure they have all the permits pre-season. And then also the liability expectations of the market. Do they need to have their own liability insurance? Is the market covered? Also getting them to sign a waiver so not hold the market responsible if there's an issue, or the town if you're on town property. And I've added another link here at the bottom because that is the spot on our website where you can actually find examples of market rules, permitting information, and liability expectations for vendors at our resource library. So feel free to go check that out if you're still putting together guidelines for your market, or you'd like to see how other markets have theirs. And lastly is and most important for vendor retention is vendor recognition. This was a lovely post that Scott shared with me earlier this week of a vendor spotlight that Carl's Bad Market put out. Thanks, Victoria, if you did this. It was a great example of how to keep vendors happy and feeling connected. I love this idea of just posting a picture of a vendor and letting them know that they're appreciated and letting the community know that they're there. You can bring out some new, not only new vendors, but new customers this way. I want to go try what a colache is. Colache. Yeah. Colache. Great.
Yeah, it's been a good turnout so far. A lot of our vendors do like it, and I know that they appreciate it. And when they get to share it on their page, you know, their people, their families, you know, cheer them on. So you can tell that they really like that and take pride in that when we feature them.
Yeah, I believe it. That's great. Yeah, and that takes a lot, you know, we're busy as market managers. It takes some extra time to be able to do that. And so that was a nice touch. So,
oh, I love it. I saw that you guys used it. Oh, I see the little image now. Thank you. Thank you.
You said you were an example today. Yeah, not only vendor recognition, also remember that volunteer recognition as well is such a loving thing to do for our volunteers and our vendors who work hard when they come out and help us at market. That's what I brought today to talk about vendor recruitment. I'd love to hear any questions or other ideas that anybody has here about what they've done and what they might work or might not work for them.
I just got to commend you, Andrea, on the strategy of wording the agreements for vendors to make it a really curatable, if that's a word, giving market managers this extreme flexibility to kind of wordsmith and know when a market vendor is going to be a right fit. So kudos for offering that extra flexibility and kind of having that last word, but not there's nothing draconian about it. It just feels very community centric. So that was an awesome tip.
Yeah, of course, as managers, we want to say yes as much as we can. That's what we're there. We're there to, you know, make the vendors comfortable, to make the customers comfortable. And there are times, I'm sure, as all of you could share, where you just have to say no, and it's nice when your guidelines and your other market goers support you in that, because it can be hard to say no, especially to those vendors who want to come in and you just have to say we're not doing that at market. It's nice to have it written down already so you can point at it and say, see right here.
Yeah, and it's kind of a polite way of saying, like, we also don't want you, the vendor, to fail if this is not a good fit.
Right. I like the idea of having a separate agreement for the crafts, because I actually have a generic one for, I guess, just the produce vendors. And right now I have myself and one other person as a produce vendor, and then the rest are crafts. And the fact that you have that, I was worried because I walked away for a second when I was listening, that, you know, it was all geared to, oh no, you can only do this. But I like that little caveat at the end where the manager can say, well, you know, I'll take you this time because it's my decision. because I've got this one lady, and I don't know, she's selling structured water candy or something. What I have no idea what it is really, but people buy it and she sells it, and she's a fit because we just don't have a whole ton of people. I guess if I was turning people away, then I'd get to a different point. But I'm like, yeah, she's not really what you would expect, but man, she makes money, so okay, I'll take her.
Yeah. Customer. Go ahead.
I really love the idea having a meeting with our vendors prior to the market season. I think that's something that Carlsbad could really benefit out here, especially because, like y'all mentioned, so that they know what the standard is and that there is no favoritism and that, you know, there aren't any exceptions to the rule. So I think that's something that I may go ahead and pitch to our board of directors and our team to see if we could do that moving forward. I think our vendors would attend, and I think that they would like it.
Yeah, and there's just something about having that vendor buy-in early season, and then especially like even being able to vote on those guidelines. It happens sometimes, there's a new vendor who will say, why do I have to do this? Or why do you do it this way? When you can point at every other vendor there and say, everybody here agreed on this before we started, that makes it just giving yourself that, again, like not draconian. I'm not here as the bad guy who's here to tell you, you know, to make demands of you. We're all in agreement because we're a community. We're all doing this together. And
I love that.
Tiffany,
I just wanted to, I just wanted to say that having those guidelines it takes a lot of the pressure off the manager. I mean, it gives you the discretion to say, you know, I'm going to make an exception, or I'm going to accept you for a temporary time period, or like we have a winter market, we go year round in Silver City. So if we accept more artists in the winter, they are accepted with the understanding that they may not be accepted during our high season. But having those guidelines to point back to and say, oh, I'm sorry, you don't really fit the guidelines, takes a huge personal pressure off of you when people are so wanting to be there.
Yeah, it's true. It's hard to be in that hot seat. So it's nice, again, it's nice to have it all written down and to let people know early on when they first start that this is being able to hand them that whole packet where they sign an agreement. And so then you can say, you signed this, you agreed to this at the beginning. You know, so when they're frustrated, people are always going to get frustrated and they're going to want it to be different for them. And just being able to have those agreements is so helpful. A little extra work, but and in the long run, it makes it easier. I just want to point out in the chat here that Allison, so I actually did some research before our forum, and I found some wonderful resources online through the Farmers Market Coalition and through our own website. And there was one more, Market Umbrella, I think I'll make sure it gets shared later, the other resource. I'm not sure I see it. Oh, Market Share, there it is, Market Share. I spent a lot of time looking at these websites, and not only is there wonderful market recruiting information, there's just like a wealth of information for market managers out there. And so I did the research for you because I know you're all busy, but if you have a little extra time and you want to go look at some other resources, check out those links. If you remember to share the chat or to save the chat for yourself, if you want to keep them, and if you don't share, remember to save the chat. Like I said at the top of our forum, Scott has created a market manager forum page, and you can go there and find the videos and all of the links that anybody shares. Allison has been dropping them in there for us. So it's a nice place to go back there if you want to go back to, if you want to find something that you saw here or if you have to watch the Market Manager Forum later, we're going to make sure all the links that are mentioned are there on our website for you. I saw you waving, Ron. Was that you have to drop off, or was that did you have something you wanted to share?
No, I was just saying bye to Victoria, I guess, that was leaving.
I see.
So.
Victoria had to leave. Yeah, bye, Victoria. Thanks for joining us. I know she's got market today, I think. Well, we can.
I just want to know if we got a couple of minutes. That's it. So the problem I think that we're having is we do have the VVAC, which is the Dixon market. We have the Black Mesa market. And now it seems like there's 3 or 4 in Taos. When I was just up there, I saw little signs up. Penasco has one now. Caldy has one. Espanola has one. It's like everybody and their brothers, sisters got a farmer's market now. Is it? I don't. I'm just having the hardest time getting more people. I mean, and now our season has really been kind of crappy overall, I guess you could say, for produce people like myself. We didn't have rain for 2 months, and if you didn't have good acequia water, you're kind of out of luck for a lot of places around here. I mean, last year was flood city, so not only was it flood, which is bad, but it was a lot of rain, which was really good. We had lots of produce and fruit and everything last year. So I don't know if Tiffany or any of you guys, Virginia, have ideas about trying to pull teeth in this kind of market.
Or all the markets have on different days. That was my first thought.
Yeah.
Different days of the week.
Yeah, I mean, we've got that's Wednesday and Friday for my 2 markets, and then the others are like on the weekend. And I keep, I do Friday and Wednesday and Friday because usually when I have a good year, I have enough for Wednesday, and then I pick again and have some for Friday. And it just seems to be that way for me. And I would think that if you would come to the Wednesday, that you could do a Sunday, in the same respect. But I can tell people that till I'm blue in the face, but I can't take too much to the markets because if I take I took like 2 tubs of grapes to the market Wednesday, and I threw a whole tub of grapes away. So yeah.
I feel your
Anyway.
pain because we have 1, 2, 3 other markets around us. One is on Saturday, the same time our market is, and the other 2 are on Wednesday, one in the morning and one at night. And I have vendors that vend at 2 markets a week, and they're fine with it. But I also have lost some of my vendors that I had early on in the spring before these markets opened to those markets. The kind of the plus side of that, if there is one, is that they usually come back for our winter markets, and because those markets stop in October.
Interesting. Yeah, mine goes to October so far. So
there's a group up in northern New Mexico called the Northwest Growers Market Alliance, and it was actually multiple markets that were all on different days, and they were not coordinating with each other, and they were all struggling. And what they actually did was they wrote, and this is big, and so this is a big idea that can be scaled down, but they wrote one of these USDA grants, and they got funding to have a director for the Northwest Growers Alliance and to also help support the market manager roles, and they unified as a coalition. And so then it made it so they were all coordinating with each other and making sure that the timing was right for the different small communities that they're in, and that's worked out really well for them. And I'm sorry, we don't have, Shane Shupla is usually here, and they're one of the managers in that coalition, and it would be nice. Maybe one of our market manager forums will have to be Paulina Powell is the name of that manager, or the director of that coalition. I think that would be a really great market manager forum to get them in to talk about what they did, because I think even in our Grant County area, Tiffany, you've heard me talking about this, that just to have
Yes,
all the local markets working together rather than feeling like they're competing with each other. There's so many shared services you could have. So Ron,
Right.
I don't know if reaching out to those other markets and trying to meet would be something that you'd have the bandwidth for, but
Yeah, I did work a little bit with the Penasco people because Penasco at one point they lost the ability to have their market wherever they were having it, and something about permits or something. And I posted, "Hey, I need vendors. We don't have a market. Let's go." And then some of the people took offense, like, "Oh, that's inappropriate." And I'm like, "No, it's not inappropriate." And I was like, "Well, it's not inappropriate. I'm just trying to offer you a spot because I know when I don't have a spot, if I have fruit, it just goes to the ground, So you've got to do something with it. It's not going to keep forever." So the market manager and some of the other folks were okay with the idea. It's like, I'm not going to keep them forever. I'm just going to give them, here, have a week, whatever. Like I don't sign lifetime contracts with blood oaths or anything, whatever.
yeah, that's an interesting point. As a market manager, we learn different, how competing, because there's no competition in agriculture in New Mexico. There's not enough, right? But
the perception.
big markets, yeah, the perception and how to communicate. It's always best to reach out to a manager first. And we're learning, it's always in Silver City here, it's always best when the managers talk to each other, because the vendors have different ideas than the managers on what's fair and what's not fair. And so but I think inviting other vendors in who might be losing their market, that's a great vendor recruitment strategy, Ron. So.
Plenty for everyone mentality. I'd love to hear from that alliance, just because I hate that competition is so negatively charged in business sometimes, whether it's like our local food truck scene here in Clovis. They don't want to park near each other. They're very territorial, and it doesn't have to be that way. So I always love a story where they flip the script and show you the other side of what competition can do.
Yeah, I think that we've been talking about throwing around different ideas of getting market managers involved in telling their stories here in these forums. And I think we just hit the bullseye, Scott. I'll do some reaching out to see if we can have that happen before the end of the year here. So I haven't heard the whole story either. I would like to hear from them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
So that link is I'm just gonna make it real quick because it's totally off subject. But every time I see Scott, he reminds me of Josh Gates, and it's this show. It's a TV show, Expedition Unknown, and he's got a great personality, and it's just like Scott's personality almost. And if you watch him, he's funny and smart too. And he's basically an Indiana Jones kind of person. So
I'm flattered. Thank you, Ron. It's so funny. I saw that in the chat, and I'm like, this is the second time somebody has called me Josh Gates. I can't remember who he is. So I guess I need to tune into his show and try to embody him even more. Maybe next time I'll have a cool hat.
It probably crosses a lot of people's minds, but I'm just one of those guys that if it comes up, it comes out. I used to have a friend of mine that says, "Ron, if it comes up, it doesn't have to come out." I'm like, "Yes, it does. It does."
I love it.
We call Scott our tech ninja around here. I think I'm going to start referring to him as our tech Indiana Jones.
Tech explorer.
You gotta get a little hat.
Just need the hat.
All right. Well, I guess I got UPS and my battery's going out in my ear. So I guess Andrea, you were closing. So I guess I'll let you go.
Thanks for joining us again, Ron.
Bye,
I
Ron.
think we lost Tiffany too. We've got Virginia. Maybe we'll see you all next time.